All our speakers are ready, always, right? But it's our audience that are kind of la 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 about this, right? So what do you do, right? What do you do? How do you make it so that whatever's happening here with these great people who are ready to go, they're gonna get like, what do you do, like bonus points? Uh-huh. For something. Okay, anybody has anything to offer to anyone who's sitting here, really doing a good job of showing up and etc. I'm gonna make a note, just a second here. Nope, nope. Time is precious, and but our time together is even more precious. And therefore, okay, we can do 5 minutes of wish list, okay? Real wish list, because TBTI has a lot of capability to make things happen. So, if you want us to start putting something together for you, you can do that wish list for us. You're not raising your hand because of what I just said. She's just like speaking on the phone and raising her hand over there. What is it that we want? That you want, we're going to take some of those that you like to see done for your country, for your continent. Everyone has a microphone. Wish list. Go ahead, Lily.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. My wish list would be, I think for this conference, it wasn't as widely publicized as it could have been, because a lot of colleagues that I work with in Kenya from other organizations were not aware that this is going on. So maybe for the next ones, we just need to shout as much as possible to ensure that we get more participation from everyone, including small-scale fishers.
Okay, so the wish list in this case, what we can do is still limited because we are just an organization trying to, do our best in mobilizing community. But this is going back to you, because if you started to tell everyone about it, then it would happen, right? So thank you for that comment. We'll do our best. From now on, you're all going to be connected to, or we'll send you another message about signing up to join our newsletters. You would receive the digest. You will be in the communication loop, and then and we'll take notes. If you want, we'll take notes of all of you. If the camera can capture who's here at this time, next time we have conference, and we have travel fund for people to go to conferences, you are the first to get it. Okay? See? That's getting good, right?
Up in the wish list.
Are you on the wish list?
I want to be on the wish list.
Yeah?
Who else?
Okay. So just remember that, right? Because I'm not saying this to everybody. It's you who are in this room that are hearing this. So if you think I would forget, you just write to me and say, by the way, I have promised. Yeah, we will meet again, right? In 4 years, the World Congress would happen in one location in the world. Maybe in the meantime, there might be your own conference that you organize for the continent. And my wish list would be to also participate in that one. But we would host the fourth World Small Scale Fisheries Congress, and that would be in 2026. The fifth, this is the fourth, the fifth, see, I'm losing count. The fifth World Small Scale Fisheries Congress will be in 2026. Your wish list, where would you like the Congress to be? A place you always want to go. And you know that there are good small-scale fisheries, great things happening. Come on, you guys, wish list.
Just say it.
No, how much? Where the world, this is the World Congress, the fifth one. Where would you like it to be? Where would you like to go? World Small-Scale Fisheries in 2026.
Oh.
What? Where would you like to go?
Thailand. I heard Thailand over here.
Thailand, we have been there twice already.
Yeah.
Hang on, hang on. Where do you want to go? Yeah.
Ah.
Where would you like to go? 2026. There'll be the World Small Scale Fisheries Congress. Where would you like to go?
Samoa.
Samoa.
Why?
Why? Why would you like to go to Samoa? You know, you see a lot in pictures.
Yes. The culture. I love the culture.
What's your name? What's your name?
I'm Kelvin Washira from Kenya.
From Kenya. One ticket.
Ratana has a world-class memory, so you will be on your way.
Now you are raising your hand. Patrick, where would you like to go?
China.
China. And why China?
I've,
You know, you get a lot of love from that end. I don't know why.
Little controversial choice.
I've heard about a lot of technology innovations happening that side, so I want to learn what I can also see and witness with my own eyes, and learn how to get that to Africa, to my country, Malawi.
Almost convincing now, Patrick. Then we need about a week to do China. Samoa is small, right? Maniba.
I would like to have it in Antarctica.
Where? In Arctica?
Antarctica.
Antarctica.
Yeah. Maybe on a big research vessel.
That's a really big ticket.
And nobody can step out of the conference.
And we can even meet through lunch to dinner.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, over there we have more suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. I've engaged with my colleagues in the Caribbean, Milton Horton, and I'm sure Belize will be a perfect spot. Ooh. But if not, I'm jealous about my region. Yesterday I was in a session and Madagascar brought in a very beautiful story, and I'm sure those who didn't have a chance to engage now will have even a bigger opportunity, because they also have a very vibrant leader for the fisheries sector. But not forgetting Malawi.
Madagascar, Malawi.
But my first choice is Belize.
Belize. You know what?
We can take the research vessel.
We can go from, you can take the research vessel indeed and go around to all these places. Okay, we're not going to tell those who just arrived what we are doing because tickets are sold out.
Oh, we have another one back here.
Oh, we do.
I'm changing the continent, also I'm following what Siki. I think Costa Rica would be amazing.
Costa Rica. Okay. So we have now Samoa, China, Madagascar, Malawi, Belize, Costa Rica. Not bad. And then Antarctica, of course. Okay. Oh, another place over there. Okay.
Maybe we try Fiji.
Fiji.
Oh, Fiji.
Yeah, yes.
Sorry. Okay. And for the same reason as Samoa? Fiji. Fiji would be a good place. Get a bit of that South Pacific. And there's a strong organization there, the SPC, the South Pacific Commission. And they are facing a lot of similar issues, being small islands, development states. Okay.
Isaac.
Oh.
Fiji, 100% for me.
Are you just supporting Fiji? Is that what you're doing just now? Yes, for Fiji.
Fiji's been seconded.
Second to Fiji. Yeah, that's not a bad one. Are we seconding? I don't know about China. So far, the word China came and everyone's like, huh? Huh? Yeah. How do you do it usually, right? Just to be serious for a second here. Congress doesn't happen on its own. Just because we want to go to a place, it would just happen, right? So if we don't have strong hosts, if we don't have organizations, collaboration, partnerships, that existing network, it's never going to happen. So if you happen to know anyone in Fiji, in Belize, in Costa Rica, in Samoa, China, Antarctica, Madagascar, Malawi, you just have to start mobilizing it and build that kind of, we can do this. You happen to know, right? We run it as like the Olympics. Yes, it's every 4 years. It's a kind of Winter Olympic years, not the Summer Olympic years, like 2026. Okay. So we don't do like a major bidding process where people just, offer this and that, and then they don't deliver, right? Because, we're serious about delivery, our deliverable. So we will have to get back to you and get more feedback on this. Okay. Now, I think we are ready to get into action. These are our, the number 5. Now, you guys have been great. 2 days Congress is long, and we start early and we end it late. And they have been really much into, engaging really nicely. So thank you, everyone. So we got 2 more plenaries to go, and then the final one, which is a closing plenary. And I hope you would stay through that, simply because there's a lot of important conversation that would take place in that final hour. So you don't want to miss it, and you really would, I hope you would stay and contribute. So let's put our plenary slide up on the screen. Okay. So I would like to invite the co-chairs of these plenary sessions, Friday and Moniba, to take it from here. Thank you very much. Please welcome Friday and Moniba.
Thank you, Ratana, and good afternoon. It's an honor and privilege that myself and Professor Moniba Isaacs will be co-chairing this session, session number 5, which is on community-based conservation. Can I now hand over to my co-chair? Lucky enough, she'll be coming back. She's co-chairing, but also presenting. Let's give a hand.
This is now the social reproductive roles of women. They play a chair and a presentation and also a discussant. So welcome to the session. We have 4 powerful speakers in this session. We have a speaker, Lily Dali from Kenya, representing WWF. And if you don't know who's WWF, just look for the panda and you will find it, okay? So Lily, please, you can join us upstairs. Sorry, on the stairs, on the stage. I see Lily's presentation is up already. I am going to call all speakers to come up because I think by now your presentation should be done. Okay, so you're not gonna still work on your presentation now. So the next speaker would be Haddad Naufal. That's how he said I should pronounce it. And he's from the Tunisian Society of Sustainable Fisheries. Please, Haddad, if you can come join the stage. And then I have a duo from Namibia that would be joining us. This would be Britta Hackenberg, Namibian Nature Foundation, and then Renier Burger from the Fisheries Department, the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources in Namibia. And they are going to give us a kind of a duo between civil society and government. So that sounds very exciting to me. The session we kind of planned for today is to look at how do we think about conservation. And the reason I wanted to be particularly in this session is that conservation is such an important tool. Yeah. And last but not least, my apologies. How can I? Evans Kwazi Arizi from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. And just give him a hand of applause to come. My apologies, Evans. It is that duo of Namibia that confused me because your name was in between the two of them. So I know this is the graveyard hour and we all need to be energized. You know, we had a lot of starch, so it's all going to land on your eyelids. So I hope that we're not going to fall asleep. Try not to fall asleep during this time. So this is about conservation. It's a very important tool. It's a very important aspect. And, you know, when we look at conservation and we think about conservation, the best way of conservation if it's done by community-led. And in Africa, we have a lot of experience of how to do conservation via community-led. We also have a lot of failures of conservation if it comes from outside. So I think we're going to take, the panelists is going to take us through that journey and to look at both what are the models for conservation, but also I would like some debate afterwards coming from you as to how we engage with conservation, and especially what do we mean, what does 30 by 30 mean for communities when we're talking about conservation. So Lily, you are going to go first, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope I do not bore you to death. Now that you're just from having your lunch, I hope your attention is still on us as we discuss community conservation. So my name is Lily Mwasi. I am the Marine Program Coordinator working at WWF Kenya, and I will be sharing with you this afternoon our experiences on community engagement, participation in conservation from 20 years of marine conservation in coastal Kenya. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging a lot of my colleagues that are in this room this afternoon that are also doing a lot of incredible work in the Swayo region. But for my presentation, I'm going to focus solely on our Coastal Kenya program. So our marine interventions are spread out along the coast, as shown by the map you can see. Our marine work started in 1996 in Kiunga, Lamu County, with a major focus on sustainable small-scale fisheries and sea turtle conservation. However, this focus grew to include fisheries co-management, enhancing marine protected area management, and also managing plastic pollution. Eventually, our geographic scope also grew to include first the entire coast of Lamu, but then eventually also the entire coast of Kenya. Just to iterate what has been said here over and over, community takes center stage in the work that we do as WWF, and not just in Kenya, but WWF in general. So all our projects are co-designed and co-created with the communities that we work with. To achieve this, we work with community groups linked to marine conservation. These include civil society organizations who are crucial for capacity building and policy engagement. We have beach management units. These are fisheries co-management structures that work with the government to ensure sustainable management of the marine resource. And members of BMUs in Kenya include fishers, fish sellers, boat owners, and fish dealers. We also have fisheries commodity interest groups, and these are people who are involved in fish dealing and market sourcing. We work with turtle conservation groups as well, and these are groups that work on a volunteer basis to conserve sea turtles along the Kenyan coast. And last but not least, we work with village savings and loans associations, and these have been mentioned here before. There are community groups that enhance access to finance at the grassroots level, and they save money jointly and provide small development loans to each other. A big challenge that we've encountered as we implement our community work is sustainability, and how to ensure that momentum is sustained throughout, and even when we exit as WWF, our interventions can actually go on. So through donor funding, we usually are able to establish community conservation interventions. However, these programs are usually bound by funding, duration, and project implementation timelines. After that period, the momentum may slow down because the funding and the project implementation time is done. And then, of course, we start looking for more funding to continue the work. But meanwhile, the ecosystems that we had been working to conserve can actually suffer. As such, a new approach has been necessary to ensure that community conservation work is sustained. Donor funding could be used to train communities, not just in conservation, but also in sustainable financing. This includes income generation activities that include but are not limited to ecotourism. Income generation conservation can actually attract more interest from the community and in turn make our work more sustainable. So even as WWF, the funding that we have for that current project runs out, conservation interventions can actually continue because they're community-led and have been sustained. I would like to touch on some key interventions where we've been working with communities to enhance community-led conservation and make it more sustainable. First, I'll touch on BMU leadership and governance. I mentioned that BMUs are beach management units, and sustainable community conservation can only be achieved through good leadership and governance. So in this, we work with our government partners to train BMUs to enhance leadership and governance within the beach management units. We also have an aspect of sustainable fisheries. We've heard here before that the small-scale fisheries sector supports over 13,000 fishers along the coast of Kenya, and increasing populations and issues like climate change have actually put pressure on the fisheries resource. It is therefore necessary for us to actually closely monitor fish catch and to have informed decision-making to ensure that there's sustainability in the fisheries sector. So to achieve this, we've been working with BMUs to implement fish catch surveys, and the data that is collected can actually inform management decisions to ensure that sustainability of small-scale fish stocks is sustained. As we work towards improving income generation within the small-scale fisheries sector, we are currently working with CIGs to provide training and equipment for fisheries value addition. This will help to increase income and improve fisher livelihoods. Additionally, we've been training BMUs to provide and providing equipment for fish quality control, including hygiene, sanitation, and to reduce post-harvest losses. In addition, we also work along the fisheries value chain to link CIGs and beach management units to buyers in the market for value-added products. And to achieve this, we've been working at all levels, including with the government. We've mentioned VSLAs here over and over, and it's just important for us to highlight how life-changing they have been. They've been a way to enhance microfinance at the grassroots level and for sustainable business development and reduced dependence on marine natural resources. These groups have been embraced by women more than men. Maybe the men in this room can tell us why. But actually, VSLAs have been one of the most successful interventions that WWF Kenya has implemented, and they're actually being replicated along the entire coast. So some of the benefits of VSLAs that have been documented include easy access to loans. The community does not have to have a bank account, a title deed, or a pay slip. They can access finance at that grassroots level. They've been able to access education as members are able to take loans to pay for school fees for their children. And last but not least, they have provided means to expand and start up new businesses. In addition to providing financial services, the VSLAs have been a platform through which to engage the community in conservation. I want to go back to this. Okay. It's not moving. Could I get some help? Okay, sorry. I want to go to this slide and ask how many of us in this room agree with that. Okay, so it says if you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate an entire nation. Show of hands. Why aren't there any men raising their hands? There are very few. You don't agree? So I would like to highlight one of the very important interventions that we have been implementing as WWF. This is the Girl Women Program that has been providing scholarship support to women and girls in coastal Kenya. So women and girls, as we all know and as we've mentioned here several times, are essential to ecosystem management and building resilience to climate change, and we must include them at the center of decision-making processes. Unfortunately, this has not been happening as much as it should be. So as WWF, we believe improving access to education will build the capacity of women and girls to participate in natural resource management and decision-making. In providing these scholarships and internships, we have molded future conservation leaders and have created champions for marine conservation and sustainable utilization of marine resources. As of now, we've actually provided over 200 scholarships, and this is something that we are continuing to do. So you might ask what some of the lessons we've learned throughout these 20 years of conservation are, and I'm going to highlight some of them. One, working with the government and having their support is essential for the success of any intervention. Then clear-cut community benefits and benefit sharing mechanisms in the case of marine protected areas is also essential to ensuring that interventions are sustainable and are embraced by all community members. It is also important to understand the socio-cultural dynamics of any area where you want to work. For example, in our case, the way you engage men is usually different from how you engage women, so it's just important to have that in mind. It is essential to have co-creation and co-design. This ensures that the partnership and ownership is stronger over time. Then livelihood improvement components are essential in all the interventions that we have been doing. If communities do not see the benefits of any conservation you want to implement, there may be no incentive for it. Then patience and perseverance is key. It is not a straightforward road. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward and 5 steps back, but it is important to persevere throughout the process. And lastly, it is important to embrace adaptive management. The way you initially plan out things might not be the way you end up implementing, so it's nice to be flexible. Asanteni sana. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Lily, for your presentation. Really a rich presentation in terms of how community-led conservation. So I just wanted to introduce also our second discussant, and that is Tetsu Sato from the Iheme University in Japan. He would be the second discussant on this. So our next speaker is Haddad Naufal from the Tunisian Society of Sustainable Fisheries. Is this presentation ready? You tell me, Haddad, in English? You're going to present in English. Okay. English presentation. Thank you. You've got 10 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. I present a model of community-based conservation in Tunisia. This is... Okay. The Tunisian Society for Sustainable Fisheries is an NGO created in 2017 in Sheba, Tunisia. Our vision is enhanced fisherman skills for better organization, achievement, effective participation in the management of fisheries resources. TSF Okay. TSF intervention with communities. We go to other artisanal fishermen where they are. We organize a participatory diagnostic workshop with the fishermen in their landing cities. Among the cities where we have worked a lot is Sheba. Sheba means, which means in Arabic beautiful, is a small coastal town on the eastern of Tunisia, bordered on 3 sides by the sea, gives Sheba the status of a peninsula. Its economy is mainly oriented towards the sea. Artisanal fishing in Sheba. The area in Sheba consists of seagrass bed with a depth of between half meter and 2 meters with a relatively high tidal range. A very favorable area for the installation of an ancient fishing technique to use palm. Use dates back to the Punic period. There are about 60 fishermen who practice fishing in Sharfia, and about 600 artisanal fishermen who practice net fishing by small rowing boats. This is a map of the area. You see seagrass bed is very large. Okay. This is a photo of Sharfia. Sharfia, respect for the sea resource, is the FAO describes Sharfia as an ingenious system of the world's agriculture heritage. Sharfia fishing bears witness to the ancestral intelligence of our ancestors to respect the sea and its resource. Sharfia, registration of Sharfia on the list of intangible heritage of UNESCO. Thanks for efforts of the NGOs of the Kerkena Island. The species, fished species. The species fished are numerous, highly diversified, and seasonal. The fish capture is in fact free from the alteration or crushing effects that the nets of trawlers or seines can cause. In addition, this fish is collected alive and slightly fasted. This fixed gear is protected by legislation. Sharfia is organized by decree and specification. Each year, 16 fixed Sharfia are auctioned off for rental to groups of 1 to 6 fishermen, depending on the area occupied by each Sharfia. The surface is from 400 to 11,000 square meter. The Sharfia must be dismantled during the summer months, a crucial biological rest period to preserve and renew the stocks. Sharfia exploitation problem arise. Exorbitant costs of palm and their transport. The fishermen replace by trawl, gill nets, and renting these fisheries for a single year is therefore problematic. It obliges each of the successive beneficiary to renew almost entirely the structure of the fishing gear. Failure to respect the biological rest period, no dismantling of structure in summer. Changes and danger to resource. Since 2015 season, the practice of this type of fishing has led to the depletion of fish stocks by targeting juveniles due to the adoption of fishing tools that illegally use small nets, meshes, instead of palm. Palm is, you use palm leaves. And this forming a marine barrier made up. The surface is illegal enlargement of maritime area by 30 to 75 times, from a few thousand square meter to a few 100,000 square meter. thus forming a marine barrier made up of nets reaching 17 kilometers off the coast of Sheba and Malouj, in flagrant violation of the law and without dissuasive action. The rental price increased from 10,000 to 70,000 per year. This is the picture of the Sharfia is a barrier 17 kilometers. Emergence of a conflict between artisanal fishermen and Shrafi operators. These structural changes introduced in this fishing technique have raised issues, including the conflict between Sharfia holders and other small-scale fishers who seek the same resource by different gears in the nearby area of Sharfia. I pass to comment revenir? Donc, the Tunisian Society of Sustainable Fisheries, I mobilize artisanal fishermen, and we organize a participatory recommendation in a meeting held at the headquarters of the Governorate of Mahdia on December 2018, were well received by all parties seeking to sustain fishing activities in this maritime area. The demands and claim of artisanal fishermen is strengthen and intensify the control of current users of Shrafi, and other point, strengthening the capacity of fishermen to safeguard traditional fishing technique and local know-how. We are the development of community interaction. This close interaction with the community was invaluable, as it allowed the development of trust, as well as the possibility of understanding the problems experienced by the artisanal fishermen. Successful conservation requires that local community be engaged and show how they can benefit from conservation effort. This is the message of community conservation. Pressure from illegal Shrafi operator, demonstration supported by the Union of Industrial Ship Owners put pressure on the administration with relented by organizing a restricted meeting on February 2019 and rejected all the participatory recommendations of December 2018. New provision intended to circumvent or skirt the measures protecting artisanal fishing in Sheba and Malouj. This decision in no way reflects the expectation of our artisanal fishermen, but poor governance of the sector. Disappointment of artisanal fishermen and uncontrollable anger. The fishermen, artisanal fishermen, organization of an attempt to immigrate fishermen's family to Italy, like the photo. The TSF unfiling commitment to apply the SSF guidelines, human right and dignity, no discrimination, consultation and participation. the tactics to defend the right of artisanal fisher, the tactics employed organization and participation in social movement, request for access to information, articles and press releases, report and publication on the media and social networks, filed visit and meetings, meeting and correspondence with the authority, alliance with journalists and civil society. This is the photo of these tactics. We are organized. The press, web press. In the second stage, importance of the legal aspect, jurisprudence in the defense of the right of artisanal fishermen. The TSF sent a letter to the Minister of Agriculture to request compliance with the rules for the exploitation of shrafi and the obligation to ensure their proper application by the Fisheries Administration. Faced with the refusal, the TSF adopted the penal action in order to put pressure to respect the laws of the exercise of fishing and to put an end to the violation which affect the environment and the people. A success, but the fight continues. Illegal fishermen exploiting the shrafi, shrafi is plural of sharfiya, have respected the biological rest during the summer of 2022, but there remains the fight for the use of palm leaves and the respect of the spaces allocated for the establishment of these fixed fisheries, sharfiya. And finally, we recommend respect and protect the right of defenders of human rights in their work on small-scale fisheries. I awarded a trophy to the president of the association, Mr. Bassem. Okay, thank you. Thank you for a minute.
Thank you very much. We are in a continent with multiple languages, and thank you for making the effort to write your speech in English so that all of us could follow. It's your first time too. Much appreciated. Can you just imagine presenting in a foreign language for the first time? That is big. Hey, so well done on that, and much appreciated for your effort. Our next speakers is a double act. I don't know how they're going to do it, but we have it's the group from Namibia, Britta Hackenberg and Renier Burger. One from Nature Foundation, Namibian Nature Foundation, and the Ministry of Fisheries in Namibia. They're going to give us a geo-act. I don't know, Britta, you can lead with that. So you have double time, double act.
We'll try our best to entertain you with our double act and our double pitch. Yeah, we are going to talk about community co-management of inland fisheries reserves in Namibia, but we are also operating in Casa. We are together, and that's how we are hanging in there. No? We are government and NGO pulling at one string, and that's how we roll. Renier is going to give you the introduction. I'll explain later on what exactly we are doing on the ground. Oh, I get an own microphone. That's fair. Okay, so I'll step back. Renier, will you please give us the background on where we come from, what's the history, what we do, what's the legislation, and how we roll?
Thank you very much. I don't know who of you know Namibia. Who's been there before? Those of you who haven't been there, you miss a lot. It's a huge country. It's almost 900,000 square kilometers with less than 3 million people. We've got the highest dunes in the world, the only country with desert elephants and desert lions. We have excellent, what do you call it, culture. I think 13 ethnic groups, a history of community management, lots of wildlife. It's, I think, the third most visited place by European people. So in our presentation, when I saw Monday and the whole week, people really have problems with small-scale fisheries, to empower small-scale fishers. In Namibia, we really have a solution. Because we are dealing with a people-centered approach. We have the enabling legislation to do that. Before 1990, before independence, our northern regions were run under what we call customary land rights in communal areas. And yeah, I'm just giving a short summary. So yeah, so we currently have around 22 community-run fisheries managed by fishermen, by communities, with an area of around 2,500 hectares under complete community management, with a 5-fold increase in fish because of that. So Britta will go into the details of that. That's where we are getting through this presentation. So you can see here, it's the Ministry of Fisheries. We provide the legislative platform, and then we have a vehicle in Namibia called the Namibia Nature Foundation, which is the most experienced organization when it comes to community mobilization, not only for inland fisheries, but in general for community-based natural resource management. Which one do I press? The green one? I don't know. Oh. Yes, the green one. Okay. Yeah. So we operate in the Kaza area, which is the Kavango-Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. I'm the head of fisheries in the north, which includes the whole Zambezi, the Kavango, and the Kuvalai system. The Kavango, we have 3 names. In Angola, it's called the Kubango. In Namibia, it's called the Kavango. In Botswana, it's called the Okavango. So in this area, communities are very much dependent on fisheries. You can see the hyperdimensional representation of reciprocal interactions there that influence the management of those fisheries. There was a shift in governance from before independence, customary law, and then after independence, statutory law came in, the Inland Fisheries Resources Act. And in that period, we observed commercialization that started taking place because the powers from the traditional authorities was basically eroded, and people with commercial interests came in and they started overfishing. So our fish population declined by almost 90%. And we saw that. Luckily, in 2003, 1999, we had the white paper on inland fisheries where it was clearly suggested that we should take management of the fishery back to the communities. From there, in 2003, we had the Inland Fisheries Resources Act with 3 very strong components. The Section 2 of the Act gives the Minister the power, in consultation with traditional authorities, to determine policy with local authorities. Section 22 of our Act makes provision for the Minister to declare areas to be run by communities in consultation with traditional authorities. And Section 29 of the Act gives us the power to gazette these committees running those areas. So basically, nets came in and overfishing took place and the fishery collapsed. Where do I point it? It's not working. Oh, there it goes. Is it that? Okay, so governments wants to save rivers, scientists and conservationists wants to also save the rivers, but tourists, government and scientists and conservationists cannot save the rivers. Only the people can save the rivers. And that we realized because through regulatory interventions, we couldn't stop the overfishing. And now we move towards resilience through community fisheries. That is co-management for sustainable use. And then the next one, the basis for livelihoods and small-scale fishing and economic development. That is what we do through the interventions that we have in CASA and all the projects that support us, implemented by the vehicle, which is the Namibian Nature Foundation. We basically organize the communities, and they basically select the management committees, they select the fisheries committee, the fish guards, and the fish monitors. They come up with a management plan, their constitution, and then the ministry goes and gazette the whole area, which is being identified by the community, and it's run by the community. And that includes value chains, everything. The CBNRM approach in Namibia, which started in the 90s with wildlife conservancies, help us a lot, because you can see on that diagram we have the wildlife on the one side under the Nature Conservation Ordinance, the Ministry of Environment. And then we also have on the right-hand side the Ministry of the Inland Fisheries and customary rights in the middle. So these three are combined. We have the conservancies, and if the conservancies want to include the fishery, we include it. So it's basically total community-based natural resource management, which even includes sometimes trophy hunting and all these type of things. So there's a lot of revenue coming into these communities. And there's the breakdown of the legislation that I just discussed. Conservancies was legalized in Namibia in 2006. So we can basically form fisheries, community managed fisheries areas within conservancies and outside. So we don't really need conservancies because our Fisheries Act gives sufficient provision for gazetting such areas as fisheries managed areas outside of conservancies. Okay, so there my presentation ends. For my part, Britta will take over.
Thank you very much. Now, actually, I think I'm more comfortable to speak here. So actually now, since this is under the topic of conservation and community-based conservation, let's hear also the voices of community members. I hope Raymond will find his voice.
So our members mostly depend in the river and in the event as well. So yeah, for our life, mostly depend in the river, most especially fish, and some other plants, and other mammals as well. So this is part of our life. So therefore, the members within the conservancy, they came up with an idea with the support of the Media Nature Foundation or Plenary. So we came up with an idea of setting up a fisheries reserve, which can help us manage our nature resources, or which can help our fish stock to boost. So therefore, we have realized that the nets, so these are the 3% which caused the decline in fish stock. Therefore, the members, they have decided that all the nets should be banned. So they are being sensitive. So since the nets are banned, so we have to use the traditional net. So which is this one. So we call it CBD. So in the Smunga, so this one is a Smunga, it's a traditional deer. Traditional deer which are not here. So you mentioned Mudula and many more. So long it is a traditional deer. That's what the members decided to use for to take fish. So fish is very much important in our
All right, so I think this was a community voice explaining roughly what we are doing. I'll repeat that a little bit in a summary form. So what we understand is a community co-management of fisheries reserves. It's a water body that is allotted for conservation and the sustainable use of fish, which is managed by the communities under the custodianship of government. And so through the structures of management and conservation and governance, we are trying to achieve livelihood outcomes, cultural values promoted, and have also conservation outcomes. So I think, it's quite clear what we do. So we are identifying natural water bodies. Communities decide on new rules. There's a governing body for it. People are educated about those new rules. They're enforced by local people, so-called fish guards, and through bylaws, which is accompanied also by citizen research to what extent it's also compliant, but relatively also what is caught by the people. And then also those areas are officially recognized, as Renier had explained before. So what are the benefits of those communities? And we are riding always on the back of the conservancies, which is the institutional vehicle that we have, but don't necessarily have to have. But I think one of the benefits is that it provides livelihood options, which is also the intention of the CBNRM policy, so that we're having a diversification and having also access to healthy nutrition. I think we have seen in previous presentations how important fish is for local communities who are far from the markets and who are far from clinics and other health services. What is really important also is that we are promoting cultural identity and ownership. And actually, it was just 2 weeks ago when you were discussing the decline, which is also apparent in one of the areas that we are working in. And there was just a lot of catfish, which is a serious sign of degradation. Until one of the community members said to me, like, you Mukuas or Muzungus, like you say in Kenya, you just don't like catfish. And I said, no, but actually catfish is just a sign of degradation. And he said, but it's about spiritual healing. It's important. It's important for us, for our tradition, for our spiritual well-being. I said, that's great, because I think this is also your community fish reserve. For whatever reason you have, we have to reserve it, and we have to restore it, we have to protect it. So actually, this is also one of the community benefits. We've talked a lot about the healthy ecosystems and the increase of more fish, and then also the compliance to rules that are put in place. Generally, we find it very important that the new rules must be socially acceptable while also achieving restoration outcomes or conservation outcomes and being ecologically meaningful. Am I forgetting something here? No. So when we are designing a fisheries reserve, our legislation is really flexible, and that allows communities to be in the driver's seat, to really take ownership. What are their objectives? What are the target species? What is the scale and what's the approach? And what are their rules and tools? So they choose from a variety of gears, time and method restrictions. So the one community said, we have got bag limits of 10 kilograms per day per fisherman, not more. The others say we want to have a closed season. The others say we only fish Monday, Wednesday, Friday. What else do we have? I think others have traditional gear, like what you have seen in the video. So it's really the community to decide what can we do in order to restore our fish stocks. So we also come up with management plans, but we know that communities don't read. So actually we put up posters that are also very clearly outlining the rules in the reserves, but then also having access to that information for everyone in the local language. This is not the local language, but actually this is the English one. Having that ownership of the communities is really important, because they're the ones who have to live with the consequences, and who also have to enforce the new rules. And what also is really important is that it's not only us to decide what or to advise what are kind of the findings, how to design a fisheries reserve, but I think relying on traditional knowledge is highly important. Because we can do as much as research as we want to, but we will never understand where in the olden days, way before the research has started, and those rivers are not well researched, where the Nimwes were, those, I wanted to say ugly fish, but Renier said green fish. Okay, it's a, take it, it's a green or is it ugly? I don't know. So actually, combining traditional knowledge with science is a key aspect that we have learned, and the successes that we can show really right now are stunning. In our pilot sites, they were gazetted in 2015, 2 areas which had a high success in terms of the restoration. The fish in the reserve are 5 times more than in an area outside. There's a higher diversity, the fish are heavier, they're bigger, and people find that they're having new opportunities, including also through sports fishing. In August, there was a competition of all those recreational anglers, a lot from South Africa, who got super excited about the opportunities that they're having for recreational angling, which is again also chances for communities to generate income out of that. So as Renia had said, we have right now 20 reserves, 2,500 hectares. Soon we'll embark on 30,000. We have had the discussion, what does that mean also for 30 by 30? Target 3 under the new Global Biodiversity Framework. We will soon have 22% of the Namibian part of the Kavango River under conservation, be it protected areas or OECMs, that other effective area-based conservation measures. It's a bit of a clumsy abbreviation. And I think this is really a great success because we are moving towards where we want to be. And that's the future that we want. We have increased knowledge for adaptive management and improved design for the fish reserves. And we have seen also an evolution of the model. Communities are willing to take ownership. So we have moved away from single areas that are no-go zones or no-take zones to large areas, which is not under protection, but under conservation, which the community decides how it looks like. We have talked also about benefit sharing and about livelihood options. And I think there is one aspect that we have not really tapped so much into. We have recently made an exercise to understand where does the fish from Namibia go? Because communities complain there's a decline in the fish, but we also don't eat fish anymore. So we asked the question, where does the fish go? And we had to understand that the fish goes as far as DRC. Sorry, guys. But actually it's the truth. And so the issue is rivers are open access with no clear definition of what is small scale and what is subsistence fisheries. So actually individuals benefit from exploiting communal resources, and those ones who lose are the poor, the vulnerable ones in the communities. And I think this is a discussion that we have to entertain more in the future. Equity is not only who benefits, but also who is invited to the party, who is invited to the decision-making processes, and who is invited to, or who is a recognized party in the system. So I think this is one of the concerns that we are having while we are celebrating our successes. In the context of CASA, we also have to look at the other side of the river. It's a shared resource that we are having with Angola, Zambia, with Botswana, and as such, I think we have to understand what's happening on the local levels, but also what is the larger ecosystem looking like and on landscape level. So working from both sides, looking at overarching transboundary management plans, but then also working it bottom up with communities who are living just opposite on the river. And we had that exercise last week. And communities were asked, what is happening between the rivers? There are no official border posts, but we know that they are just crossing in those dugout canoes. And so we asked, what are the flows between the two sides of the river? And in the beginning we say, yeah, sometimes wildlife is crossing, sometimes we are crossing, until the point where one said, come on, guys, you even come over to charge your phones. And the other one says, yeah, but actually you visit your girlfriend every day. So for people on the ground, this is not a border. This is just the river that's separating families. And that's why we also have to bring not only families together, but also the management. And that's why we are working on transboundary management. Lessons learned. I was asking Lily if she copied my slide. She said no, but actually it looks very much the same. So fisheries contributes to social ecological resilience. Ownership is pivotal. Peer-to-peer approach is most successful when we are promoting. It's much better that one community talks to the other one, be it on the side of the river or on that side, than us coming in to try to educate communities. And it's really stunning because it's the first time that communities come to us and ask us, can we do that as well? Because we see it works in Sikunga. So the issues that I have raised is about equitable benefit sharing, sustainable financing. I think this is nothing new, but we're working on it. But also overly important is that we need to have capacities among stakeholders and our partners on the other side of the river, which we are trying to help also with training and coaching. And for that matter, we have also developed standard operating procedures. The tackle box. Am I talking about that or you?
Yeah, so currently we have developed, first we call it the guidelines that describes how to create such a community-run fishery. And they were how many? 13. And we cut them down to 8 now. We have 8 SOP with 8 points on it, how to do it. So very clearly descriptive. And then we developed also a tackle box that any person who implements this, because it might be communities who want to implement and there's no resources in the ministry, so anybody can take the tackle box and start organizing their own community to develop such a community-run fisheries, and then bring it to the ministry, and we require the traditional authority to sign off on it and the regional governor. So once that happens, we know everybody's been consulted. The ministry looks at the plan, we look at the maps, and then we gazette it. So then it's a legal entity run by a community for their own benefit. So the tackle box was developed recently, and the SOP endorsed by the ministry, and we are now looking at ways on how to make it a regulatory tool by gazetting it under our regulations in the Fisheries Act. Okay, so that's it. And there's some of our fish guards, I think that's from Joseph, ne? So that's how the fish guards look after they've been trained. They get uniforms and everything. We provide them with boats and train them on how to do fish monitoring, and the ministry also then comes in to measure the progress, a baseline, and then the progress every year. Thank you very much.
We have some USB sticks. Talk to us, whoever wants to have a copy of the SOPs and the tackle box. Happy to share. Thanks.
Please come and teach us South African.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I see there's a lot of excitement around community-based, community-led conservation. And I think it is a very interesting case in how to lead conservation from community perspective. Last but not least, we have Evans Kwazi Arizi from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana, to give us his presentation on community-led conservation.
I think there's a problem with it. I'm going backwards. Okay. Yes, I'm okay. Thank you. Good afternoon to you all. My name is Evans Kwesi Arizi, and I'm from Ghana, University of Cape Coast to be precise. I'm a fisheries scientist. And this afternoon, I'm going to present on the topic, adoption of community-based conservation towards sustainable fisheries. One may ask, what is a fishery? A fishery is an interplay or interaction among fish, its environment, and people exploiting the fish. So without people exploiting the fish, you can't talk about a fishery. They go hand in hand. And what is meant by unsustainable fishery? At what point does a fishery become unsustainable? Here, I'm going to use the diagram you see to explain that. So for a fish stock or fish population, the dynamics is dictated by some processes, such as reproduction, growth, fishing mortality, natural mortality, and in some instances, migration. Now, in a case where you have so many individuals that are taken out from the stock as against less individuals that are recruited in the fishery, the fish stock becomes unsustainable. And what are the repercussions? So biologically, you have low catch, low profit, and low income. And as time goes on, when this condition or these conditions continue to exist, there will be no catch, no profit, and no income. And communities or fishing communities whose livelihood heavily depends on fisheries, they are hit with hardship. In fact, excruciating hardship. However, a fishery becomes sustainable when you have more individuals that are recruited into the stock as against less individuals that are taken out of the stock. Under this condition, there will be moderate catch, moderate profit, moderate income. And where more individuals are recruited into the fish stock, you expect high catch, high profit, and high income. I think we are gathered here because you are all looking for this type of fishery. Is that not the case? I believe that is the case. And that is the kind of fishery we all want. In Africa, in most cases, governments take sole responsibility of managing and conserving resources, including fish stocks. It is more of a top-down approach. And in such an instance, you have government coming up with their own policies associated with laws and regulations. And so you find out that local fisher folk often have issues with such policies that they are not part of when it comes to formulation. These policies are rejected, and so they end up poorly complying with the laws and regulations that are associated with such policies. So such policies end up becoming impotent. And so in the long run, in most cases, such a situation leads to unsustainable fishery. And we don't want such a situation. We are tired of such a situation. According to World Fish Center, in 2007, community-based conservation or management is the right option. And I give more or less reference to your work, what you just presented. It suggests that community-based conservation is good to adopt. And this is where you have communities fully taking part in managing and what is happening. So you have the communities taking part in the management and conservation of resources. And it falls within the ambit or scope of co-management. In this instance, the fishery or whatever resources are not entirely given to the fishing communities to take charge of. But government comes in, but not so much. And then you also have scientists. In fact, all the stakeholders will be there to support. But more power is given to such communities to even come out with their fisheries laws and regulations. And those laws and regulations should be backed by legislation. They should be legislated. And so once fisher folk are part of processes formulating policies, laws, and then regulations, they are content with such policies. And so they have the strong will to support the implementation of such policies. And you will expect that there will be sustainable fishery. Now, a classical example is what you have in Ghana, in the Pra estuary, where fisheries, fishing communities, other stakeholders such as NGOs, the scientists, people from government, Fisheries Commission, they all came together, they dialogued or jawed, and they came up with a fisheries management plan, and it is community-based. And so out of the partnership collaboration, they were able to come up with some management actions and strategies. Yesterday, I did a presentation, and those of you who were there should be familiar with such images. And so the image on your left is just a section of the cover of the management plan document. And then the image on your right is just a map showing the areas in the estuary that are closed to fishing. Some areas are closed permanently, especially areas that are shaded red. And the areas that are shaded, let me say area that is shaded yellow, is seasonally closed to fishing. But when it comes to identification and selection of such areas or sites, you need scientists to come in. You can't just stand beside the water body and say that, well, let us put let us close this area to fishing, or let us use this time of period to close the fishery. There should be a scientific backing. So that is where we scientists also come in. That is where we can contribute our quota. And this is an area where I'm trying to develop my career. And so there should be a strong scientific research to come out with viable management strategies and actions to support these fishing communities. We should work hand in hand to help salvage our fisheries. And some of the management actions include closed season, closed areas, and mesh size regulations. Of course, there may be others, but these are the key ones. And for fishery scientists, those of you who are fishery scientists and are here and are willing to undertake such studies, just make sure that the life history characteristics are incorporated into the research, and there should be parameters that are imputed in your models, just to find out the population dynamics of key fish species so as to arrive at the optimal closed season, closed areas, and then mesh size regulation. And in Ghana, I have made it a point to make sure that such management actions and strategies are observed. And I'm in a process, in fact, I've developed some of the models where you just use the life history characteristics and then you impute into the model, and you're able to tell that for this type of water body, we need such an area to protect so as to conserve the fish stocks in there. But if your pocket is dry, you can't do this research. If you don't have money, you can't do this kind of research. So more funds are needed to do this. And I hope that few years to come, many water bodies in Ghana will have such management actions and strategies put in place. And that can be extended to other countries around the world. And the kind of sustainability or sustainable fisheries that we are all looking for can then come to light. Thank you so much for your attention.
Another round of applause, please. Thank you very much. When we hear something about community-based, blah, 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 there are certain terms that come to mind. Are we putting a fox in a penny's house? Number one. Are we looking at governability, governance? Are we going ahead to look at elite capture? There are certain terms that can go round and round. But from the stories we have heard, it gives us some sort of an impetus to hear more, especially from the group. Now, let me call upon Professor Sato. Professor Sato is a social scientist, a renowned social scientist from Japan. Currently is working in Malawi. Can you introduce yourself fully? And then as a discussant, take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Friday. And thank you very much for inviting me to do this important role of commenting such a fascinating presentation. I had a very strong impression that this session is very, very productive because of these valuable presentations and sharing knowledge, your knowledge. But probably I need to be a bit more provocative. First of all, I recognize that Professor Isaac Moniba deliberately used the term community-led, not community-based. And I see quite significant difference between the two. Probably, she really wants to emphasize community has to be a leader. And I have been listening to various sessions, and probably the talks in this session also have a similar tendency that there is a long list of interventions given by governments, NGOs, and scientists, which probably cause some kind of fatigue to the community of small-scale fishers, because they are always told you are the actors, main actors. You have to do something. You have to have ownership about your resources, and these are repeatedly coming to the community, and it may create, the most negative impact may be the passive attitude of the communities to listen to these external interventions and try to respond to that. That is something I felt really uncomfortable. But today in this session, I see a difference. People presenting right now provided a bit different atmosphere to about their attitude to the community. That is typically expressed in the repeated appearance of co-blah, blah, blah, co-blah, blah, blah, co-design, co-creation, co-management, everything you are talking about doing together. And doing together simply means that government, external organizations, or NGOs, scientists, it's not a leading agency to transform the community, but these external actors are partners of the community to work together with the community to develop the design of actions, collective actions, and also systems that are shared among these diverse actors. This type of approach is a little bit different from simply the outsiders just trying to impose some system to the community. And these type of equal partnership may produce a very positive impact of community-led conservation. And that is one point I really want to make, and I really want to know if you are deliberately trying to do these type of partnership, to establish this type of partnership with the community. And then second point is then how to build this partnership. Partnership is, of course, important. That's obvious, but it's not really easy to establish. And even it is established, it is again very difficult to maintain it. And probably many people, especially Lily, clearly mentioned that the process is slow and take long time. And I don't remember who, but somebody also strongly emphasized the complexity of the systems. That simply means that the outcomes is not immediately visible. Whenever a community takes some action, the outcome can be visible in a longer time period. It takes time. And to maintain the partnership throughout these longer processes, probably you need a mutual trust. The trust is the second keyword I really want to make today. And this trust, I really want to emphasize mutual. Mutual means both sides trust each other, and then who initiate these mutual, the establishment of this mutual trust? I think scientists, government, and external organizations is the starting point to trust communities. And I really see this common tendency of the trust of the community in the talks of this session. And this is the second point I really want to emphasize. And I also am keen to learn more about how did you build a partnership based on the trust, mutual trust. And the third point, this session is focusing on conservation. Conservation is obviously important for scientists like myself, or government, and probably NGOs like WWF. But I see it is not really obviously important for the community. And apparently there's a gap in values between these external organizations, actors who see the global impacts of small-scale fisheries, and the community members who have much more emphasis on their daily lives and their survival and sustainability of their community. And in such a sense, there is a gap in values. And these value gaps have to be filled in some way. And probably in today's panelist, talks of today's panelist, there is a very strong tendency that these livelihood or human well-being aspects and conservation aspects have to be improved synergetically. So the synergy is the most important thing, and probably the first priority for the community can be the livelihood or human well-being, while these type of actions to improve livelihood or well-being may produce a byproduct to contribute to the conservation. These type of process may be working in many cases, which contributed to fill the gap and build mutual trust to come up with the long-term persisting partnership. Thank you very much. This is my comment.
Thank you very much. You are bringing up so many terms as well. Incentives, power dynamics, partnerships. All these are central to the debate we are having. Now let me call upon Professor Maniba Essex as our second discussant. Thank you.
Thank you, Friday. Thank you very much to all the presenters for their inputs, and I agree with Professor Sato that the session has really been about a particular different approach on how to do conservation. One can really see from all the different case studies, whether it is in Kenya, in Tunisia, Namibia, and Ghana, there's definitely a different approach to community-based management. But this approach is not new. As Britta mentioned, that in the early 2000s, there was the community-based natural resource conservation driven by that. And that conservation strategy was mainly for people in and around protected areas, and Africa led particularly on community-based conservation. So conservation at that time struggled to kind of meet the biodiversity and livelihoods. And at this point, there's a realization that livelihoods is as important as biodiversity. But I want to extend that a little bit further. To what extent do we then include, when we look at biodiversity and we look at community and livelihoods, where are the justice issues? How can we include social justice when it comes to biodiversity and community livelihoods? So my question, dear, is the first question is, who benefits? When you look at a community and you look at that area, my question is in Gaza, in Gaza, what's on my mind? In Gaza, there's also different countries that you are talking about. There's Angola and there's Botswana that most probably have different approaches in terms of managing. So how do you look at transboundary management? To what extent is that part of the, what are the politics around those transboundary conservation-led management? So for me, that is an important to, how can we bring in more of a social justice lens? I also see these pockets of gender in your presentations, but it doesn't feature strongly. So what is the role of women? What is the role of labor in these initiatives? To what extent is labor, and whose labor is being used when dealing with that? The other point, and this is the final point that I want to make, that I think is important, is when we're talking, and this point I have made in the conference throughout, is the funding. So when there's no more funding, in the WWF case study in Kenya, I worry what happens to conservation. To what extent is there enough resilience and enough livelihoods, alternatives, or livelihood activities and benefit sharing if there are no financialization for these activities? I also, so for me is how do we think about financialization? To what extent does communities benefit from the funding, and what happens when funding is withdrawn? All the activities, livelihoods, benefit sharing activities are funding dependent. And that is problematic. While in other countries like Tunisia, are there no community-based organizations that are self-funded? To what extent is there also a need for self-funding? So for me, it is the failure of co-management, especially in fisheries, that had been written extensively by Professor Hara that is sitting here, and colleagues. Friday was also part of that, is what happened when the funding withdraw. When the funding withdraw, then the co-management failed. So I want us to be very careful when we look at these initiatives. Can we also imagine is it sustainable with no funding? Thank you.
Thank you, Maniba. I think it's now time to open the floor. I can already see a hand up there, another hand up there. We'll start from this side. Please introduce yourself, and then if you can be specific to either of the speakers. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Hello. Okay, so my name is Godfred Avio Siedu. I come from Ghana. I just want to add a little to what my colleague from Ghana said and shared with all of us. So what I'm coming to talk about is also based on where Professor Moniba Isaacs just ended. In the mid-1990s, World Bank supported a fisheries subsector capacity building project for Ghana. And during that time, 133 community-based fisheries management committees were formed. And at the end of the project, I think only a couple were sustained because there was no funding. And so beyond that, in 2010, I think another project started again, and we had to look back at the successes and the failures of the committees, and then we could move forward with that. And we realized that there was no legislative backend for co-management, and so we had to prepare one and put a co-management policy in place. We started in 2012, and this policy became operational in 2020. And between 2020 and 2022, implementation has been poor, and that is where we are now. And so I think other countries can also learn from our experiences and look at how best they can also think about some of these things when they want to implement co-management in their countries. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it goes down to Sustainability. Isaac.
I was initially coming to speak on what he said because it was started in 1997 by the World Bank. And the World Bank did that project in Ghana. And after the whole project, 100 this was formed, and the implementation was wrong, because the reason why it went wrong was this, that before they started the project, there were already beach community management. The local people were managing themselves. And then they brought this project. Instead of using those they were managing themselves, they started to implementing a new team, which the community were not happy with them because there were a political issue. Two, even those they were instituted as the co-management were not living in their communities. These are the issues that happens in Ghana, issues that didn't happen. And the funding issues, how were they going to even fund? The co-management aspect that comes with the World Bank says that the local fishermen has to be taxed with money to protect the beach. Before that project, the local fishermen were doing the beach management themselves, organizing themselves, managing on the sea, and all those things. But with this funding came in, they came in with different category of policies that were not in favor of those communities. This led to that project failing. So I'll just add a little bit to that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Adding on to the Ghana case, final one before we'll then give the speakers before we open another round.
Thank you very much. I will be short because my colleague has just really pointed out, what I wanted to raise. What I find it, a little bit frustrating is at two levels. First, I'm talking about co-management. When we talk about co-management, there is some trend to make abstraction of the fact that our fisheries in West Africa, that I know better this region, are recognized as being, sector where traditionally we have what we can really consider as co-management. But it's not made in a conventional way. That means you have, in Ghana, you have local chief, in Senegal, for example, just to say that we had a traditional hybrid system involving the how we say, the governmental, agents on one part, on the other hand, traditional leaders that really contributed to a more or less good fisheries governance. But what did happen really with this conventional, framework called governance system, and generally conceived from a top down. When you set up this new, how we say, fora or new institution, they really affect completely, what have been done, in the past. I could talk, for minutes and minutes regarding what World Bank. World Bank in Senegal, for example, have really, gradually question, a good collaboration we used to have between traditional leaders and on one hand, and, I will finish with some, comment, a very short comment. I wish for that when talking about, co-management, it's very important to make the difference between inland fisheries, maritime fisheries. It's really very, very, the issue and challenge are very different from one sector to another. And otherwise, I thank you a lot and congratulations for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari. I will give a chance. It's not a Ghana case, please. It's for everybody's case. We can open up another to answer the questions, to bring up the comments. But of course, my friend Evans, we are put on the spot. You start.
You go up to the microphone.
You are not.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. I think so far, what they have said, I see them to be comments. Perhaps to complement what I presented. And I was glad to hear from Professor here that it should be co-management, but then it should be led by the community. Once government imposes some policies on the fishing communities, they are not ready to buy into those policies. So it would be great that all the more the fishing communities are involved in formulating such policies. And I think when that one happens, the fishers or the fisher folk will be ready to tango with government and other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Prof?
I also would like to add one comment on these cases of failure of the intervention to impose the co-management system. As somebody indicated right now, there is already existing co-management system practiced by the community. And the problem is governments, scientists, or NGOs, these people traditionally didn't try to learn from these practices. And this tendency is now transforming. So now people are ready to learn from the community practices, and that is a good sign, so that in the future, the situation will drastically change, so that the community-based practice or community-led practice is well reflected in the many intervention activities. That is my comment.
Thank you, Prof. I will turn my, yeah, I think I saw two hands here. You start. Go on there.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, for recognizing me. I think I would want to build on what Professor Moniba had alluded to earlier on with regards to issues of social justice. I think we must be aware and take cognizance that the absence of women in whatever we are doing, the women's voices, poses an ethical issue. And as much as possible, let's try to unpack what is it that is happening with that lens. I wanted to ask that, yes, with all the initiatives and the examples that have been shared here from different countries, what role have women taken to ensure or to identify the places where the sanctuaries or the reserves are established, considering the multiple roles that they play with using the rivers, the waters, and things like that? As we are establishing these areas, are we not affecting their day-to-day activities? Are they able to go and wash plates in those areas? What are the effects of the materials that are going to use for the resource that we're trying to conserve? So we need all that into play so that we can be in a position to understand and appreciate what impacts is it having to the different social groups, more especially women who are involved in the reproductive roles. And also, maybe as we are doing those interventions, are we providing any alternatives to cater for those limitations that the people may have to access the resources that they used to have access to when they didn't have those conservation practices in place? So I wanted to build on that one. Thank you.
Please introduce yourself before sit down.
Okay, I'm Chikondi from Malawi, the Department of Fisheries. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw a hand here.
Thank you so much. I'm from Mozambique. I'm Juluzita. I want to share a little bit with the gentleman on presentation about Ghana opportunity. I would like to say that my experience in my country, we've got this movement of co-management. But co-management means, as the professor said, involvement of this community from bottom. So any process of planning should be started from down up and not top down. So, and the involving all stakeholders. The stakeholders are different. It may differ according to the culture of the area. There are places where you talk with the owners of the boards. So the seamen don't talk because what the bosses say is what's true. Some areas women don't talk because if the husband is there, so they don't talk. So when we make consultation, we divide them into clusters in different groups. The owners, the simple sailors, and so on. So you find the ideas of each of us. So we've got very rich experiences in Mozambique. We've passed through what has been said here on Ghana 2 years, passed through long years ago. We've got the measures, the government. So what the final phase actually is to involve them on everything. Another experience, which is mainly from Asia. when they talk about eco-management, one of the key issues they don't let, I think here we are failing in Africa. We talk about all these things, but the management finally is the technological management. So, for instance, in Asia and in Thailand, they talk about this, but they train with community, step to step with gears. They see the type of gears. I've seen Dr. Yesora talking about mesh size. Mesh size is good, but mesh size depends on the type of gears, on the cluster of gears. They are, for instance, if you talk about traps, the selectivity is not on the mesh size, is on the form of the trap. So these are the issues which we have to link here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that intervention. I'll take one first here, and then oh yeah. Pratip, you'll come later. I think already somebody is to take over take up the mic.
Good afternoon. I'm Sisir from University of Waterloo. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I have two questions. One question is for Namibian presentation, wonderful presentation. The same issue we are actually dealing with. So when we talk about transboundary rivers and reverse management, there are multiple interests than only in fisheries. So interests are spanning around sectors, multi-sectoral issues. Then when we have a sectoral kind of arrangements around fishery, how do we engage with this kind of multi-sectoral issues so that such issues gets a primacy? What are the principles are you working on so that would be, if you can place it out, that would be a good learning point for us? That is one. Second, I happen to be one of the largest microfinance initiatives in India. I happen to be CEO of one of these initiatives. I will just take on point of Moniba. So like in Kenya, we actually project microfinance as one of the sustainability pillar, so that would help in continuing the efforts. But what we are observing now, it is actually making that structural injustice in the capital economy that is setting in within the women community-based microfinance initiative. So what are those safeguards you are taking so that the women who are powerful among they are not taking the largest benefit of it? And it is really going to the people who are in need. That is one. Second, how do these microfinance institutions, when they interact with the larger financial instruments, safeguard themselves so that they can operate through social justice principles for their own members? So these are the two questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can you quickly please respond where questions were? And you can also make a comment on top of another comment. Who wants to start? There was a question of somewhere voices of the women, I think, but also he has raised two questions. You want maybe? Sure. Yes, please.
So I think some of what has been said is more input into some of the work that we're doing rather than demanding responses. So we do take some of that feedback that you're giving on, but I'd also like to point out that as WWF, I think issues of justice have come up once or twice, actually several times. And we do have environmental and social safeguards that we ingrain in all our projects to ensure that there's justice for every member of the community that we work with. So it's really important to highlight that, and all our projects actually go through a screening process to ensure that we are not causing more harm than good and leaving communities worse off than we actually found them. I'd like to comment about the issues of sustainability. I think it's been mentioned that VSLAs are one of the ways in which we ensure our work continues because they're self-funded, self-running mechanisms, and we actually continue to build capacity throughout the project periods. But then I think issues of income generating activities have been a learning curve for most of us. Not just for WWF, and that is why I mentioned that we're actually working to improve on this, and we're trying to set up community enterprises through our incubator programs to actually demonstrate the investment readiness of some of the community interventions where we're working. to draw investors and to make it more sustainable in the long run. So it's a learning curve, it's a process. It is a bit slow, but it is something that we are committed towards. Thanks.
Thank you. I think Mariba, you were somebody talked about something.
Thank you. I do think that social and environmental safeguards are not necessarily social justice issues. And I think we need to be cautious to kind of distill social justice issues and human rights violations into and package it into social and environmental safeguards. I think that it's also more and more important to look at, especially when we look at the Loliondo case in Kenya. It's not fisheries, it's land-based conservation, where Maasai people are, through government intervention, are being forced off their land for royalty and tourism. So I think it is important that we also, in marine conservation, link conservation to land-based conservation, that it is not disconnected to the land issues, and that we cannot just look at conservation through the lens of only land. The issues of power linked to social justice and gender that Chakonde mentioned, it is critical to get right. And in many of these cases, successful cases, it's often important to also look at traditional authorities, the relationship of the traditional authorities, and to what extent are men benefiting, the traditional authorities are making agreements, and that women are not the beneficiaries. When we come to South Africa, I think this is a global conference. We also need to look at conservation that is deeply protectionist based, based on race and fortress conservation. That means that we don't conserve, we preserve. And by preserve means that we're creating little paradises for the rich and wealthy to either to come and shoot animals or to come play or adventure tourism. So I think it is very important in the end to bring in the politics into conservation and to kind of not repackage it as social and environmental safeguards. Thank you.
Thank you. Rita, can you add more voice?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I have to respond to a lot of comments. Actually, I think, I have said in my presentation that we are working very much on community-driven requests. And I think that is also, answering a little bit the question on ownership, that we are not coming to impose something, but that we are coming once community asks us if we can assist or if we can work on that. And I think this is also kind of, tapping on, the role of what the traditional authorities play. And I think, we should also be adamant that, not all traditional rules were fair and just. And I think this is some of the narratives that we have to also kind of de-glorify a little bit. And I think, where also we have to work on and being very careful of how we step into a system and what kind of, regimes we are trying to change, because it may have also repercussions on a wider system. I think, we have also, moved away from that preservation approach to more conservation approach in order to allow exactly for livelihoods, considering also the role of women and those ones of vulnerable people, to not to be compromised to a point that, we are talking about injustices, but if that we are really balancing. And I think that is really very much important for us. We were asking the question of who benefits. And I think this is where we have to also be very careful, through our understandings of, we're doing a lot of participatory exercises. it is often individuals in the communities who hold power and who have kind of been the ones for a long time who benefited from what a communal resource should be and what is to be shared amongst everyone. So the benefits, I think this is also where we kind of, are at risk of creating, social revolutions within the communities, understanding that, they have watched something that was unequal for a long time. And I think, where we can also just help to create, an environment where communities dare to discuss amongst themselves who should benefit, and not only those ones who hold power. And that's, I think, how we are moving towards a more equity and social justice.
Thanks, Britta. I saw 3 hands starting with Pratip. I think you had a question.
Thank you for the interesting discussion. It was really, wonderful to hear that even if the topic was community-based conservation, different speakers kind of referred to a range of, concepts and approaches. So community-based conservation, community, community conservation, community-led conservation, co-management. If we had more speakers, we would have heard adaptive community management, and a series of them. My question is, these are all narratives, created, mostly outside the community. And in the way it works in the context of communities, most of the time these narratives are used as a mechanism for co-optation. Because we're looking at partnerships, and the core philosophy is that partnerships are not built between unequal partners. They have to be equal in some footing. Therefore, there is a partnership that is possible. My question to the panel is, given the range of narratives that exist in the context of resource management, community-based resource management and conservation, how do we ensure that these narratives are not becoming mechanisms or tools for co-optation, and therefore implications for sustainability, viability, resilience, and everything else that we desire to see at the community level? Thank you.
Thanks, Pratip. There was a hand at 2 hands. Yes, after that, you can also come in.
Thank you so much. I'm Bono Semani from the Department of Fisheries, Zambia. I just want to drag a little bit on the aspect of co-management, because I remember very well we introduced it in our country in 1994 under SNB project. And it worked a bit well because there was no police backing. But immediately the project phased off, that was the end. And then later on, when we revised our Fisheries Act 2011, we incorporated the aspect of co-management in the policy. And now we are trying to re-energize it. Now, I just wanted to find out, do we have a case where co-management has worked successfully without donor funding? Because it's like, from my experience, immediately the donor will come with a project, they'll be given all these equipment, boats and everything to use. It will kick and it will work. But when the project finishes, the structures will also be down. Now, do we have a plan, a way forward, or now we can help to sustain these structures on their own without donor funding? Thank you.
Thank you. We have got a case in Malawi. Final one.
Thank you. Mine is not going to cost us time. I just want to make a bit of correction to one of our excellent presenter, that Loliondo is in Tanzania, where you get Mount Kilimanjaro and the Serengeti National Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that correction. I think I will just give a few or 2 minutes to those who want to wrap up. Before I invite, sorry. Please take the floor. Modesta, take the floor.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to,
Introduce yourself first.
sorry, you've called my name. Modesta Medad, I work for WWF Tanzania. I just wanted to contribute to the issue of finance problems for our coastal communities and their sustainability. Actually, to me, what I see is we still have to support them because we are relying on the resources. Just like the way we are struggling to find funds for our own institutions, we should do the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, you'll wrap up.
Yeah, sorry, actually, I have to take the floor again on the sustainable financing. I think there are mechanisms that can work. And actually, we have got a couple of very good examples in Namibia where through joint ventures, through fees, fines, but also kind of, through packaging, community-based natural resource management and integration of other aspects, we have areas that we don't need to support financially, but that are just completely solely self-sustained and co-managed. So there are successful examples, but I think, we also should be careful that we are not creating, sorry, actually no offense, but that we are not creating just jobs for ourselves in order to be relevant in the system. Can't let communities go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I said there's cases where communities have demanded to participate in fisheries management. We have got a case like Chuta in Malawi. When the government, because that's a lake which is very remote, we didn't even recognize it within our policy and legislative framework. But there came a time when Lake Chuta dried up, there was migration of fishers who went to this particular small lake with sand nets, and the community said, no, we don't want this type of net. And they demanded. Since 1995 up to now, they are doing it, even patrols, they are doing that on their own. We have another case on Lake Malawi around Benji. Benji is a community-based, I would call it traditional management initiative. Since 1955, it's a small lake, it's a small island. They have always been managing the fishery on their own, traditionally. When the government says we close the lake for 2 months, themselves they close for 5 months. We don't even go there, we don't do anything. They're doing that on their own. So that's a short story about it. But let me now ask Sven Yontov, I think, to wrap up. You have done a lot on co-management, you have heard the stories. What are your thoughts on this? Please come forward.
Lots of things have been said here, and it's hard for me to sort of summarize or wrap it up. So many things, it's really heartening to listen to. Personally, I started to work on co-management, the concept in the early and the mid 1980s, and then for us, this was just a concept, a dream perhaps. And it's very encouraging to notice the enthusiasm around the concept and the many examples of co-management working. It is a very ambitious concept, and we should not expect that it is easy. We should not expect that there will be just successes, that there will be no failure. When I talk about co-management, there is always someone in the room who will raise their hand and say, I know of a place where it didn't work. And then implying that the concept of co-management is unrealistic, romantic, will not work in practice. And then I used to say that for me, co-management was always a way of democratizing fisheries management, bringing people, for those, bringing those whose lives and livelihoods are affected by fisheries management. You need to have people with you and not against you if you're going to success. And therefore you need to involve them in a sincere
an equitable fashion. And you must, of course, not do it for the sake of, or with an idea of co-optation, as Prateep. There is always risks of failure. There is always risks of, someone have bad intentions. They may see co-management as a way of securing their particular interest, a way of, so there's a lot of stuff to think about. But just as with democracy, which is a challenging concept and an ambitious issue, you may find examples around the world where democracy doesn't really work. But what do you do with that? What do you do then? Well, you do not abandon the principles. You try to fix the design, the way it works. We still believe in the principles. I think I, at one point, argued that, with co-management, as so many other issues, the devil is in the detail. And those are typically design issues. How you actually design it organizationally, which rules you introduce, etc. And they may or may not work, and if they don't work, they try to fix them. But if the devil is in the detail, you must ask yourself, where is God? God is in the principles, You have to believe in the principles, that this is not just an effective, efficient way of managing fisheries resources, but it is the right way, because it speaks to some basic ideas about how we should live together and how we should solve problems and who should be involved, etc., etc. And it's just, read the traditional Rockdale principles of cooperatives, and you find the principles of co-management there. So if you have cases where co-management doesn't work, you do not abandon the principle. There is one thing I would just like to add with regard to community-based co-management, which is a way of decentralizing co-management. It doesn't necessarily have to be decentralized, but that is a good idea because it needs to be close to the people. I'm convinced that there are, you cannot expect that co-management, community-based co-management will work if communities doesn't work. So, as part of the process of creating co-management system, you must also make sure that communities functions. I do believe that co-management can be a part of building communities. But there is so much in addition to that that is needed in order to make communities functionable. So you have to sort of broaden the context when you introduce. You cannot just think about the management system. You have to think about the context within which it is working. And when we talk about communities-based management, we must think about communities. They cannot be isolated from each other.
Thank you very much. Can you join me to give a big hand to our speakers and also to our discussants? Thank you very much.
And of course, our two chairs. Thank you. Okay, so a bit late again, but we're going to get back on track. So you got 20 minutes for break. Let's get back here at 4 for the gender equity session. Thank you.